In today's video, I'm going to be showing you an extreme 3D stocking that comes off the nail on the side a little bit, and then there's a lot of really built up details like the bow and the little candy cane, and there's some holly leaves and a present and a bear. I love it so much. It is so Christmassy and so classic. It isn't like a modern stocking or anything. It's just really like all of the old art that you see about Christmas that just gives you like the Hallmark cards. It reminds me of a Hallmark card. I love it. I hope you guys love it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe so my future videos as well. Bye!
So we're going to begin with an overlay of a slightly shimmery white color in the background. It reminds me of falling snow. Like I said, everything with this one I want to be fairly traditional. So like a teddy bear in the stocking, a red stocking with white trim, everything just very warm and fuzzy and nostalgic. After you have your background color laid down, then you're going to want to encapsulate with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure it's nice and strong, file the nail into shape, and then you are good to start doing the fun part. One thing you might want to do is just apply some gel top coat over the background first. That's kind of up to you. Once all that's done, you're ready to start sculpting your stocking. So choose a color that you want, whatever your color may be for your stocking, and begin sculpting it. I know in the video it looks like it's either brown or black, but it's actually a really pretty rich red tone. My camera just picked it up a little bit interesting this time. So you're going to sculpt it into that rough stocking shape. It doesn't have to be completely perfect, especially the thickness right now. You just want to get the basic shape of it down. With some clear acrylic, you're going to stick that onto the nail, press that down and hold it. Don't try to glue it, especially if you have top coat over the background, because nail glue will not hold against gel top coat. Once you have it so it's attached to the nail, you're going to grab more of the same color acrylic you used to sculpt it in the first place, and you're going to firmly attach it to the nail. As you can see, I had some staining going on in the background, which is one benefit of having the gel top coat over the background before you start, is that it will protect the white of the background from getting stained from this very, very pigmented brick red color. So you're going to secure it all the way around and add a little bit of a roundness to it so it doesn't look quite so paper flat. And once that's done and you're completely rounded it out on the back, just save this color out to the side so that you can add more to the front of it eventually when you get to that point. You can do it now or you can do it later. It's kind of an up to you sort of thing. I did just do it now, but I actually think it might have been better to do it later so that when you're assembling your stocking, if you have anything that you want to fit in a little bit more, you could cover it up with more red later, but it's up to you. So however you want to do it is fine, but then at this point now you can kind of think of what you want to fill your stocking with. And so when you're thinking about the plans, kind of have a rough idea of how many items you're going to be putting in so that when you go to start sculpting them, you make them about the size where they will fit into your stocking nicely. You don't want too few where it looks like it's underfilled and kind of empty. You don't want too many where they don't all fit or you have to leave something out. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I wanted to go with something really traditional, so I didn't want to do anything that was too modern looking in there. But if you wanted to and make like a shift and do things that were super modern, you could say put in a new smartphone, or you could put in like a video game controller, or whatever it is that, you know, fits with your scenario. Like if you, for instance, were sculpting this to represent what you were giving somebody specifically for Christmas, or if you were doing something like what you were hoping to get for Christmas or whatever it is. But for me, I wanted to keep it really classic, looking really nostalgic. So I'm going to go with candy canes, a little wrapped gift, which could have absolutely anything inside it, whatever you want to think about. And then some holly leaves. While they aren't exactly something that normally you would get as a gift, they just have that classic Christmas look to them. On my Christmas present, I'm going to sculpt an oversized bow for it. To do that, I'm going to sculpt 2 green petal shapes, since green is the ribbon color that I was using around my present. So there's the first green petal shape that's going to be for half of the bow, pat it out fairly thin. Kind of keep it almost a diamond shaped, but a little softer on the corner points, on the sides. Once you have the first one sculpted, you can set down a second bead, test it, see if it can be picked up. If it can't, leave it for another moment. Keep working on the second one as you're waiting for that first one to get to be the right texture. Once it is, fold it in half, leaving a nice opening at the folded part so that it has a loop on it and it's not just folded flat. Repeat the process for the second side. Patting it out, testing it out, seeing when it can be folded over. Depending on your brand of acrylic, they can be folded at different points. So for me, usually it's when my acrylic starts to turn matte. That's when I'm using double dip. That green is actually a really old one that I have that's a Koopa from when they had Artfinity powders. They were the little colored acrylics in jars. They no longer have that when they switched over to the Triptych powders. So it was kind of weird going back to those and figuring out when to fold it over. But that was just the perfect shade of green for what I was going for. But now back to our teddy bear. I'm going to be sculpting first the head and then the body. Since I know that his legs are going to be tucked into the stocking, it isn't necessary to sculpt them. Same thing like with the candy cane. If you you didn't have to make it necessarily full size or full length, since part of it is going to be inside the stocking and not visible anyway. On the little teddy bear, at his ears, at his nose, if you want to grab a secondary color of acrylic a little bit later, I went with more of a golden shade. That's what I used for his snout area and then the patch on his belly. If you really like teddy bear designs, I have sculpted a few others in the past. I know there was one that's one of my absolute favorite designs I've ever done for Valentine's Day is the cutest little teddy bear holding onto a bouquet of roses. And I can put a link to those teddy bear designs in the description box below. But it's gotten to the point where I really, really enjoy sculpting teddy bears for some reason. I just think it's a lot of fun to sculpt them with their cute little nose and everything. So if you are a teddy bear fan, I will put a link to those videos in the description box below. So we've got the arms to sculpt in. All of these last final little details, add everything that you need to. You might want to add another candy cane if that's something that you think that you would like, or like I said, the holly leaves. We're going to be assembling the bow on top of our present here at this point too. Take a little bit of nail glue and just dip the ends of the bow into it. I have some on the side of my nail form backing where you can't see it, and then just set them on top of the present, hold them in place until the glue starts to grab. Once that's done, then you can add a little bit more of that green acrylic right through the middle just to kind of hold it in place, make it look like the bow is tied together nicely. And then keep going through and sculpt all of the pieces that you feel like you want. And when you're doing different pieces that are the same colors, like for instance, the bow on my present is green and my holly leaf is green, I'm going to be doing the holly leaf in a different shade, a darker shade than the bow. You want to have a variety of your colors. The other thing, the present that I sculpted, the red wrapping paper, is a different shade of red than my stocking. So if you're doing multiple things within this design that are the same color, which especially if you're trying to keep it all very classic Christmassy looking, that is bound to happen just because, there's probably going to be more than one thing that you want to be red and more than one thing that you want to be green. Then just try to have multiple shades. If you don't have a very large acrylic collection and it's, you have one red and one green, you can make do with that. There isn't an issue. What you can do later is you can add little highlights and shading with either some gel paint or polish, or my recommendation would be to do different kinds of shading with acrylic paint. Or if you really want to get detailed with it, one and the last suggestion for getting varieties of those colors is to use mix your own shades of acrylic is always another option. So now we're going to start placing everything into our stocking. As you can see, you can really tell the difference between the two reds there. So you're going to start with the bigger pieces. So for me, the two biggest things are going to be the bear and the present, and I'm going to place those down first, and then grab some of the smaller things like the candy cane and those holly leaves and fill in the rest of the space. Before you start gluing them down, it may be beneficial to sort of set them out and decide what order you want them to be. One consideration I made is that the teddy bear is brown tones with a little bit of gold, and the holly leaves, the candy cane, the present are all red and green. So I wanted to separate those so that the red and green things weren't all right on top of each other, space them out a little bit, which is why I placed my teddy bear in the middle. So we've got our holly leaves. If you do sculpt anything extra, you can save them for a different design or add them to the other nails if you are doing this as part of a set. So add in everything that you're sculpting that fits in well. At this point, I've been attaching everything with nail glue, but once you're happy with the placement of everything that you've sculpted, you're going to want to fill in behind the pieces with some clear acrylic just to make sure that everything is nice and strong and stuck together. Especially like the end of the candy cane, the holly leaves, those pieces in particular are very, very thin. And so if you fill in with a little bit of clear acrylic, you're going to be adding significantly more strength, making them a lot more durable. And once that's done, going back to your nail form backing, sculpt a wide strip of white acrylic. It doesn't have to be completely perfect, but just sculpt out that strip and then leave that there to set up mostly. Once it is turned matte and you can slide your brush underneath it and pick it up, do so and wrap it around the top of your stocking for the trim. Tuck it around the 3D pieces. Hopefully it's about the right size. If you have to cut it, it'll cut really easily with a manicure scissors. If it isn't quite long enough, you can add more acrylic to fill in the spaces and the gaps as needed. But hopefully it's about the right size. That eyeballing it for what length it has to be comes with practice and just with consistently working with acrylic and sizing, and eventually you'll get to be able to eyeball things pretty well. Once you have the base done of the white, go through and add a second coat of the white acrylic, and then go through once that next layer of white acrylic is still wet and use the tip of your brush to just sort of muss it around. So you're going to basically creating a little bit of a fur texture, not anything that's too crazy or too detailed, but just give it a little bit of a feel to it. Then with a little bit of brown acrylic paint, we're going to be shading in that fur of the cuff of the stocking. With red, add the stripes to the candy cane. Basically, any place that you feel like you need to be adding details to the stocking, go ahead with acrylic paint, with the exception of adding the texture to the actual stocking, the knit texture. But everything else that you are going to be adding on, go ahead and do that now with acrylic paint. Since we are painting on top of acrylic, and not on top of anything that's sculpted with gel, acrylic paint sticks really, really well. It dries completely flat and smooth so that there's no texture left over, and it seems to just apply a little easier over that raw acrylic versus a gel product would. And if you have questions on when to use acrylic paint, when to use gel paint or gel products, I do have a video that is specifically about that question. It was a live class that the whole thing was acrylic paint versus gel paint and when to use either one and where their strengths lie. So if that is a video that you think would be helpful, I can put a link to that in the description box below. Otherwise, in this particular circumstance, we're going to be using acrylic paint on all of the detailing elements of what is inside the stocking. We're going to be adding some details to the bow, to the teddy bear, to the holly leaves, to the candy cane, and just a little bit to the top of the stocking. And then after that, apply some matte top coat, regular top coat over the top of everything that we just painted. And then after that's done, you're going to use some red gel polish to be adding the sweater texture of the stocking. So I'm going to first outline the toe and the heel, and then just create that basic sweater pattern. So when you're doing a sweater pattern, usually I find it a little bit easier to paint the details in with a gel paint instead of gel polish, but because I had a color that matched my acrylic so perfectly with gel polish, I decided to go through with that. If you wanted it to be a little more contrasting and a little less subtle looking, you would want to use a shade that is slightly lighter. You wouldn't want it to be a lot lighter, but just a little bit lighter. It'll brighten it up. I personally wanted this particular part of the design to be super subtle and not, not very obvious, just kind of like a thing that you see afterwards, after you've looked at the design and you have like a little extra thing to, hey, look at that, it's even textured. That was kind of my goal. So I went with basically the same color. I hope you guys love this design as much as I do. We have one more Christmas video for the year, so come back tomorrow for that, and I will see you next time. Bye!